Hi, welcome back, everyone. Our next session is actually a panel discussion. And the title of this panel is How does GAMP's revision impact the industry? Our moderator for this session is Charlie Wakeham, Global Head of Quality and Compliance at Magentus. She's also the co-chair of ISPE GAMP Global Steering Committee and the lead of the ISPE GAMP CSA Special Interest Group in Australia. So please welcome Charlie as she introduces our panelists.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Fran. And hello, everybody. It is great to be here. For those of you who maybe aren't so familiar with GAMP, I'll just give you a quick introduction. So GAMP is a community of practice within ISPE with around 5,000 members globally. GAMP has been producing guidance around computerized system quality and data integrity for over 30 years now. And last year, we published the second edition of GAMP5 on a risk-based approach to computerized systems. So I'm very lucky to have some very expert people join me today on the panel. And I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves in turn. I'm going to start with Subbarao, please.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are, in which part of the world you are in. Thank you, Charlie, for the session. Myself, I'm Subbarao, Kattamuri. I come from India. I'm working as the country head for Aztec process automation solutions. We are part of Trinity Consultants out of US. I have close to 30 years of experience and with 20 plus years in pharma industry. I was part of Merck Millipore team for more than 12 years. About 18 years I worked in US in pharma industry, working with different clients, different customers all over Europe and America. About 10 years ago, I moved back to India. Since then, helping Indian customers, with their automation and compliance requirements.
Thank you. I'm sure everybody will appreciate what you bring to the panel today. So next up, Gionata, could you introduce yourself, please?
Good morning to everyone. I'm Gionata Taddeucci, based in Italy. I'm partner of PQE Group, a life science consultancy company serving the pharmaceutical and medical device industry. I'm currently responsible for the operation in the whole APAC region of our company. Very happy to be here. Thank you, Charlie.
This is great. And next I'm going to ask Bob to introduce himself. Some of you may have heard him and Dodd in an earlier session, but Bob, for those that are just joining, could you please give us some background?
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. Hi, everybody. Bob Buhlmann. You see my background because I'm on the other side of the world in sunny California, even though it's dark out there right now. But Bob Buhlmann and I'm the head of what we call digital and computer systems for quality at AstraZeneca. And my background is about 36 years in the pharmaceutical industry in quality with different roles of building computer validation departments, data integrity, remediation work, if you will, and basically setting up digital transformation programs for the quality functions, and working closely with David and Factorytalk on implementing some cool tools that we've been doing at AstraZeneca. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Holt.
Thanks, Bob. I should be in even sunnier Bangkok, but it's actually grey and raining here. So I think you're beating me for sunshine. I'm Group Managing Director of a company called Factorytalk. We're headquartered in Asia, in Bangkok. We also have offices in Europe, in the UK. We provide GXP software, mainly in manufacturing. We develop our own applications. We work with partners. We do implementations and design, and we also do validation. We have a computer system validation practice for a long time. Our company has contributed to GAMP for a long time. So actually our now semi-retired principal consultant, Tony Margetts, who I think Charlie knows well, was one of the founders of GAMP. And with him, we built our computer system validation practice. And I personally am also involved in GAMP. I was brought in to help on the blockchain appendix because I'm one of the few people who I got pulled into a government project to try and help design a blockchain-based vaccine tracking system that needed to be validated. So I contributed to that. So nice to meet you all.
Thank you all very much. I hope the panelists are impressed as I am with this sort of scope of experiences and also the different geographies that you all bring to this. So I'm going to kick off with some fairly easy questions to start, and maybe they'll get a little bit tougher as we go on. So GAMP5 second edition, it brought in some new concepts, some new thinking. It started to talk about applying agile methodologies. It looked at better controls we could put in place for IT infrastructure. And it did talk about some of the innovative new technologies. Dodd, you've mentioned blockchain. Absolutely an area that needed some guidance. Also artificial intelligence and machine learning. There's a section and guidance in there. Looking from your unique perspectives, what do you see as the most enabling change in GAMP5 second edition? And maybe let's start with you, Gionata.
Yeah, of course, for sure. The progressing, of course, of technology and the implementation of new methodology have changed and shifted the paradigm from what was initially required from GAMP first edition together with GAMP second edition. Of course, agile methodology for software development has speed up a lot the construction, building, testing, and verifying all the components of a software during the sprint phase and the testing phase. Also, the artificial intelligence and machine learning can be useful in terms of providing new openings also for manufacturing and not only for the qualification and validation. Then, of course, this kind of tool needs to be carefully validated and tested, but it's a big change and big shift, in my opinion, for the application of this new technology to the industry currently right now.
I agree, that's good. Although one of the great things for me in second edition is that we don't need to validate tools, we can just prove they're fit for purpose. Because I think for a long time there was a confusion there, and it was great to clear that up. Okay, Subbarao, how about from your perspective, please?
Yeah, it's a great adaptation, as Gionata said. It is a paradigm shift from quality, compliance to quality assurance. It has brought the procedures and the methodology that pharma industry is following closer to what IT industry is always been doing. Basically, the bringing in the agile methodology. It helps in, so most of the times you get this, you're bound by the first instructions that you have fixed for the project till the end of its end of cycle. Basically, now it gives them a great opportunity to bring projects up to speed, or up to speed in terms of technology and compared to other industries. Basically, like the way you mentioned, the use of tools is made easy. So it's more, you can think of, assurance versus compliance. Basically, that's a big mindset that's helping the industry to reduce the cycle. And same time, it also helps companies to uniformize their methodologies across the globe, across the plants, basically. So those are the top two things. I think, this is helping the change that has come in this second edition is basically.
Thank you. And I really like your point about, moving closer to the practices in the IT industry, because we are fundamentally dealing with IT. And, it didn't have to be done that differently. So I think that's a really key point. Dodd, was there anything that sort of really was a big change for you in second edition? I know you were a contributor, but what's it brought to your organization and your working practices?
Yeah, I'd just like to build on what's been already said as well, actually, where, GAMP, the original GAMP was written a long time ago. It was written with IT terminology based on IT practices back in 2004 with best intentions, and they did a very good job at that time, but the industry's changed and it's been brought into alignment with how does the GAMP principles work with Agile, how does it work with tool-based requirements and continuous deployment, continuous integration and software development, all of these things really. And for a long time, people who understand risk-based and critical thinking have made that work themselves just by looking at the regulations and what they're supposed to do. But a lot of people need guidance. I mean, we're based in Asia, in Bangkok, and there's a lot of sort of medium-sized companies who don't have a lot of experience with the US FDA or EU and are now dealing with PICS-based GMPs, and a guidance that gives them confidence that it is okay to modernize and it is okay to not have all these terminologies and document structures from 2004 is really valuable for a lot of people, to give them the confidence to reduce the burden to digitize, basically, is what I feel it's bringing.
So looking on what you've said there, have you done things differently in your own organization directly as a result of the second edition?
Yeah, in two parts. So in the area where we develop software, it's become easier to, we've been highly automated for a long time and constantly trying to increase the automation between how we capture all of our specifications, how we test things, how we treat risk. And so to get through and communicate in audits actually is something that we've seen has been helpful, to have the guidance to help support what we're doing. So we've gone further than perhaps we would before, and are planning to go even further in that side of it, because we feel encouraged. On the computer system validation side, I'd say that one of the big things I've noticed, and it's a little bit the same with what's come out of CSA, justifying reducing testing, basically. Not testing everything, doing informal testing, and having supporting literature to back you up, basically, when you're trying to convince companies you don't need to go as far as maybe you always have done with all this documentation and testing. So those changes have happened.
And that's good to hear, but I had to have a little smile there because, that's what we were trying to do in 2008 when we brought out the risk-based approach of the original GAMP5, not to reduce testing just to do less, but really to focus where do we need to test, what's important, thinking about that inpatient safety and not getting too bogged down in regulations and bureaucracy and bad habits. And, I think one of the big drivers for second edition was really to remind people of that and re-emphasize that, because industry had kind of slid back maybe into its bad habits of trying to test everything just to be extra safe. Now, one of the things that Subbarao mentioned at the start of this was talking about, getting away from a focus on compliance. And really, when we wrote second edition, we wanted to start people thinking about focusing on quality. Yeah. How do we make things better? How do we improve that patient safety? And one of the things that, again, people were picking up bad habits with the original GAMP5 and kind of deriving checklists from the guidance we'd written and just following checklists. And we really wanted to get back to, think about what you need to do. Use things like critical thinking. And there was a great session earlier this morning from Ben Sauer on critical thinking. Bob, as a representative from a regulated company, what's your take on getting back to thinking about quality, using critical thinking? How's that been reflected in your own organization?
Yeah, Charlie, it's an excellent question, right? When you think about and you hear people in the industry say this is not going to be compliant, it's not compliant, you're putting compliance ahead of quality by stating that. And I learned a long time ago that if you build in quality, you'll be able to meet the compliance needs. If you're trying to be compliant, you're probably going to miss quality. So, you know, when you look at it, and I hear it again, I go to different companies, in my own company, we hear these things. We need to be compliant. We need to go talk to our auditors about it. Have they approved it yet? Well, their role is to audit and to find something. They're not experts in everything. We don't expect everybody to be an expert in everything they do. So that's why you have to rely on experts, like the end users who are going to use the tool. They know what they need. Certain groups within quality, certain groups within IT. You should know how to test and design these things. And what's important, how are you going to use it, right? What's the intended use? What's the risks? What are the controls you need to have in place? So use, you know, we say critical thinking, but it's just use your brain, right? Use your brain. What's impacting this? So if you look at things like a document management system, I've been to places where people have written 1,000 scripts in testing a document management system. And I asked the question to everybody, what makes this a GMP system? And people say, well, it's housing our procedures. So what do we need to do to verify that we have control over it? Well, it won't be compliant if it doesn't do this. Again, what is it that we need to do to control the content in that system? And what content are we trying to control? Maybe there's a handful of things. So we need to think more about building quality into stuff, right? And that's been out there for a year. Quality by design. Build in quality. Test quality up front. Don't wait till the end. So if we switch the paradigm of saying, you know, are we going to be compliant? Why don't we start saying, are we going to be quality, right? So that's what we're looking at, and you know, really, you know, and you go back to the the GAMP second edition, and just to echo what Dodd was saying before, you know, it helps solidify some of the thought and thinking that we're doing. So when you get to a big company like AstraZeneca, you get stuck in your ways of doing things. And so we're not agile where we can turn on a dime, where everybody's going to do things a different way. But if I have these ideas and I want to do something, you can go to GAMP and say, hey, you know, look, this is the way they're interpreting it. We're aligned. Or we get this CSA thing that comes out and we try to piggyback off of that. That's how we start changing the industry. So there's value in doing that.
Thank you. So since you've brought up CSA, I mean, it'd be kind of rude not to pick that one up and go with it. And you know, we did in second edition bring in the concepts from the FDA's computer software assurance draft guidance. We'd actually written those concepts into a much earlier guide back in 2020, the GAMP Data Integrity by Design Guide. So several years before the FDA published their guidance, they actually gave us those principles to put into a GAMP guide. What I'm interested in hearing really from each of you is, you know, how are those concepts going to be accepted and applied in our industry? Have you got a personal story to share? Maybe Gionata, start with you.
Yeah, sure. As a consulting company serving a vast majority of the top 10 pharma company, we have a couple of examples of companies itself that ask us to implement their CSA and new validation methodology guided by GAMP5 second edition. But as this is like two white flies, let's say, because there are some companies, especially in the areas that I'm following in the eastern part of the world, especially India, that are very carefully approaching this kind of world. Basically, they are still waiting for the rest of the world to see how they are going to implement the new methodology, the new paradigm, and of course, CSA together with the new guideline and standard provided by GAMP5 second edition. I mean, it's something that has still to be accepted in this kind of country, China, India, Japan, something, Australia, something, but the vast majority of the country on the Eastern world are still waiting to see what will happen.
But where you have encountered regulated companies with an interest in adopting it, what do you think was their main driver there? Was it an efficiency gain you were looking for? Yeah,
the project that we are following are global projects, and testing the old and verifying the old everything with the old way, saying GAMP5 style, would have taken a paramount amount of time and effort and people and resources, and of course cost. By doing this, using this new paradigm helped us and helped them, of course, in order to reduce the effort, the time, and of course the cost of the whole integration of the global project that we are following.
Well, thank you. So, Subbarao, I mean, Gionata kind of gave us his view of India from Italy. What's your view of India from India?
So thank you, Charlie. So in India, we are starting to see companies talk about it. It is, a shift in thought process from fault finding to critical thinking. That's the general shift that is coming in the quality departments, basically. So we are helping companies understand what GAMP5 second edition can do to them, how it can bring down the cycles of project management, project implementation, but we haven't seen a company that has totally implemented it. But some companies, some multinational companies that have offices in India, we're starting to, they're more receptive to the thought process of uses of the Agile methodology and more IT dependent tools. We're just starting to see, probably in 6 months' time, we'll start seeing companies, small projects being implemented in this methodology. Again, it's wait and watch mode. Most of them are in wait and watch mode, basically.
Okay, so do you think if the global multinationals with sites in India use it, do you think that will then sort of spread to some of the big Indian generics manufacturers adopting this as well?
Absolutely. So everybody let's see a success story in India, basically. Let's see a small plant successfully gone through this process. Then yes, people will, I definitely envision that a lot of small companies, mid-scale companies, even large companies in their projects, they'll start implementing this, basically.
Sounds good, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so Bob, Dodd, I know this is something that you have been working together on for some time. Please tell us about it. I'm going to let you decide who starts first. No arguing there.
All right, Bob, I'll tee you up because it's a project we've done together. So I'll just explain a little bit. So firstly, I mean, this is to do with the presentation we gave earlier to do with adopting no-code technology in for GMP use. And we created a bespoke validation model and built it into a no-code tool, so an app that validates all other apps on the platform. Just regards to CSA, I'd say we never once really looked at CSA as any kind of input. I mean, it's interesting. I think, honestly, I don't really see anything in CSA that a lot of companies haven't been doing for a very long time, actually. It's highly risk-based, critical thinking. I mean, unfortunately, with computer system validation, there's been what I would say risk-averse interpretation of it for a long time, where people go over the top, and no regulation seems to tell you to do that. GAMP5 certainly never told anyone to do that. It just emerged really through, for me, poor interpretation and risk averse. But CSA is very helpful to bring this to the forefront and try and help get rid of a lot of this documentation. And it's almost done good marketing for critical thinking and promoting this way of doing it, which is a positive thing. But really, I suppose, Bob, I mean, I guess the area we utilized it is focusing on the business process, so the intended use, and focusing on the risk, basically. The fundamental components of lean or sensible computer validation, I guess I would put it. Maybe you want to talk a bit about that, about how we use that?
Yeah. So like I said, I've been in this industry for 36 years. And so if you go back and you think about things like, well, we should be following a risk-based approach. And everybody brought that up, years ago. Let's go risk-based. We should do an agile methodology. All this great stuff, right? The point I'm trying to make is that we've been doing it wrong. That's all. and people are pointing it out. We should be validating for intended use. And what I hear all the time is we're just testing software. And we're testing it, we're testing it, we're testing it. And then people go to organizations like GAMP and say, help us. And GAMP says, right, take a risk-based approach. Well, now we got CSA, and focus, use some thinking and focus on how you're using the software. And so we shouldn't be testing software over and over and over again. We should be testing and identifying the controls that could impact the GMP aspects of that system. And that becomes your risk-based approach. Everything you do is risk-based, right? Whether you know it or not. If I decide to do one way, that's my risk. If I decide to do another way, that's a different risk. But you're always taking a risk-based approach. So this helps, as Dodd says, helps to market and shine a light on things that we have to take better approaches to things. And one of the things that I see is, or I hear, again, is we're not testing for intended use because we're going to allow our IT group to go test it for us, and then they'll turn it over. They'll validate it for us. Well, if it's for intended use, how do they know how to validate it for its intended use? Or I like the one that I always bring up that sort of gets me into trouble. You know, in quality, do we have the right people? Do we have people with software background sitting in quality? So I have a software background, right? I sit in quality, so I can talk to IT, I can talk to the engineering automation teams and stuff like that. Okay, I can talk to Dodd and his company. But I can't go in the lab and tell the biologist what to do and how to test the product. I can't tell the chemist. I have no background in that. I shouldn't do that. But a lot of times in quality, you'll have these folks going in and saying what to do for a software system. So your organizational design is flawed, in my opinion, because you're having people with limited background and knowledge telling people what to do. And there starts the problem. Oh, you have to test this. Well, why am I testing this? This has nothing really to do with the impact of the system. Why am I retesting the software over and over and over again? That's standard. This is why we bought the software to begin with. So we need to look at our organization to see, do we actually have the right people? Now with that, we do a lot of outsourcing again. And so we'll take IT organizations and they get outsourced and they use outsourced companies and they're testing it and they're validating it for us. And again, there's a problem. So we're not implementing the concepts of CSA. We're missing the concepts because we're not part of it. We being the end users, the right people to sit down, taking the right risks, not being influenced by everybody, to follow an agile methodology. What's an agile methodology? It's the same thing. Test for intended use, right? That's what it's all about. And how to document that. Document what needs to be documented. So it's good. It's a good way to shine light on the problems, you know, because it's coming from a regulatory organization that's actually saying, you know, there's better ways of doing these things. You guys should wake up. That's really what they're saying, and we should, as an industry, wake up. Try to keep the cost of pharmaceuticals down, right? By not doing all this nonsense work that we're doing of testing a document management system over and over and over again. Focus on what matters, focus on the critical aspects, and that becomes critical thinking. So I'll leave it at that. I get on my soapbox and get crazy with some of this stuff, so I got to calm down.
I would be pulling up a chair to listen to you on your soapbox, Bob, because we're so aligned in the thinking.
Charlie, just to be very, very specific. So actually what the bits that we specifically used at Link were assessing business processes for use, basing the risk on those processes, and then only determining the extent of documentation and testing, basically, solely around those two factors. So if it doesn't tick those boxes, you don't need to go, you know, very little, very light specification, more informal testing, less scripting, and this type of thing. So it reduced the workload a lot. So it's helpful.
It is, and I was reminded recently, working with Sean Wynn, who, a bit like Tony Margetts, is one of the original founders of GAMP. You know, the point of the risk-based approach was not to streamline validation or focus critical effort on, you know, only the right bits of testing. It was to increase patient safety. You know, and you increase patient safety by focusing your efforts in the area that really have that direct impact on your end patient, on your product quality, on your data integrity. And that, you know, so much resonates with everything Bob's just said about you've got to understand that intended use to be able to know where to focus the testing. Otherwise, where do you start with a whole software package? So thank you. So now I think in the time we have left, I kind of want to say we've talked about where we've been and perhaps the mistakes the industry's made. We've talked about what the revision to GAMP5 can bring to the industry now. But I'm kind of greedy. I want to know, where do we go next? What further efficiencies could we get in computerized system validation and data integrity? And I'm going to throw this one over to Subbarao first, if I may, and see what you have to say, just looking forward.
So again, like, when you look backward to look forward, so the penetration that GAMP5 had in the industry, it took a lot more time for GAMP5 to come into industry in Indian market at least. But with the second edition, I see that coming much faster because you have a lot more people who understand agile methodology, which is there in other industries basically. So that's coming into pharma industry now basically. So the same methodology comes, the same methodology applies. What else is happening in other industries, those efficiencies will start coming into pharma industry at a phased out manner or at a later period, basically. So that way, if you are looking, right now, you're going to look at a lot more tools that can prepare predefined test cases. Today, if you want to define a test case for a use case in a regular, say like a banking system or something, you approach ChatGPT and then you'll start seeing some relevant test cases for it. Then you're going to see that here, even in the pharma industry, in its compliance basically. So you are going to see AI in not just in assurance, but also in writing those test cases, in making the whole process based on other industries' experience. So that's what I see as a future things that are going to happen post implementing GAMP second edition and further down the road, basically. Yeah.
Very interesting. Thank you for those insights. Gionata, how about your viewpoint on this? Where do you think we can go?
I think that, in my humble opinion, I think that everything can be improved, but we need the right time to absorb it. Because as Subbarao was saying, there is a big shift from GAMP5 first edition to GAMP5 second edition, the introduction of critical thinking, the machine learning, the artificial intelligence, agile methodology that now is a trending topic. Before was something relegated to the elite, or not elite, of course, the people that knows very well software development and how to test it. I mean, I think we need some time, especially in the eastern part of the world, to absorb this kind of changes and to see where they are going, especially because there no regulatory agency has made some inspection on this new methodology based on the GAMP5 second edition, because basically what drives the compliance is the regulatory inspection that is saying, okay, this methodology is fine, you are doing things fine, then let's move on. So in my opinion, I think we should wait a little bit and then we can start thinking about improvement and efficiency.
Okay. Thank you very much. Probably wise to let it bed in a little, but I'm not sure I'd necessarily wait for sort of regulatory endorsement, the endorsements there in GAMP5 that the regulators review and buy into. So I think we can take some strength and some confidence from the fact that, regulators have been involved in producing the second edition. They're always our reviewers, and they've been very as it were, supportive of the way we're trying to move forward. Bob, how about your viewpoint?
Yeah, it's too bad we only have 5 minutes left. Dodd might not get a chance to speak here. So, but when you think about things that are out there, like we talk about sustainability and reducing carbon footprints, you know, so my concept is well, why aren't we working with Factorytalk to digitize everything, right? And that means we're going to go in and we're going to take all the validation documentation and we're going to just get systems that can digitize these things here and eliminate some of it, right? Where we have automated testing that just constantly goes at night or during the day, just constantly checking, so we can get better how we put patches on and protect cybersecurity stuff. The use of AI to do things, the use of machine learning to give us feedback on how things are working, right? One of the great ones is periodic review of computer systems. I find zero value in it, and yet people do it. Well, why aren't we building tools, machine learning tools and artificial intelligence to help us tell us the health of the systems? Are there problems? Are there really things out there? So, you know, if we want to reduce carbon footprints and we want to be leaner and we want to digitize, then we have to start thinking all these enablers like validation. How does all that change? How can we change that? And the sky's the limit. We can do things. And Charlie, I agree with you. We shouldn't have to wait for regulators to tell us to do something, right? We should be doing it and bringing it to them and letting them question what we're doing instead of being the reverse way. So there's all kinds of stuff, you know, to do still in this industry. We're just scratching the surface, and we have to be prepared because, you know, you're building autonomous factories, you know, things like that. So how do you go in and validate that and have paper if the whole factory is completely automated, right? What do I do with the data? I love the fact that I argue with people about we're not printing anything. We're not going to print anything. And everybody says you have to, the inspector wants it printed. Tell them, here's an iPad, use it. No, they don't like that. Well, there's a lot of things I don't like in the world, right? But that gets everybody uncomfortable because it's change. It's change. But if we're trying to lower drug prices, we're trying to change the carbon footprint on this planet, then the inspectors have to get used to it's not going to be paper. And I can tell you, and maybe some of my Singapore colleagues are here that I used to work with. There was one inspector from the US that went to Singapore and said, I just want the paper. Give me the paper. We have to change that mindset and say there is no paper. We'll give you your own little iPad, your own little computer, and you can look at these things. And that will drive change. But the sky's the limit. I'm just rambling because I really want to use up my 5 minutes, so Dodd has no time. But I'm going to turn it over to you, David, for the last 2 minutes.
Thanks, Bob. So I guess, I mean, I'm just building on really what I agree with what Bob was saying. And I mean, to me, I think that, you know, when you talk about critical thinking and risk assessing, that's something that humans, at least for now, need to do. And it's valuable that they do it, ones with the right experience and with the right training. But all of the stuff around computer system validation that is just really admin is all it is. It's just very, very blown up admin. It's very functional. All the traceability, all of these things, you can automate them, and you can automate them reliably. You can almost get to a point of automated change control. You know, you can track differentials between code bases and have controls and alerts that warn you if something has gone out. You can have continuous deployment, continuous integration testing, all of these things. And the disconnect is when all of that has to speak document at the end. The automation is gone, basically, because you have to present it as a document, and you can't, it's not dashboarded, it's not done in a way that's dynamic. But once you start to digitize all of the assets that control these risks, so the specifications, the actual risk capturing and what they are, how they're linked, what they trace to, you can view it in a much more efficient way, and I think actually improve the quality of them. So you have two wins really. More digitization to improve the company and efficiencies, etc., and less burden on sort of admin, essentially, as I see it. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to do with our company is just move more towards that. And personally, I believe The regulations support it. The regulators seem to support it. You need a company, a regulated company that is open-minded to it to do that with, of course. But yeah, I'd like to do more of that really and see how much you can improve it.
Okay. Just curious, do you see a boundary? I mean, speaking about, automating more and, yeah, it totally doesn't make sense to then sort of convert it back to something that's almost a static document, having automated all the work before then. But, when we talk about the need for critical thinking, that's very much a human approach.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a level where we say, actually, we need to keep, the human element here? I mean, Subbarao mentioned using GPT to create test cases. Can we create an AI for critical thinking? Do we think we're going too far at that point?
At the moment, I don't think. Yeah, I mean it's an interesting point, isn't it? Can you create a critical thinking AI? Arguably, at the moment, you probably can do something that appears like one, but at some point it'll run out of steam when the data model behind it doesn't know what to do, basically. You might get the same thing with a human who's not had the right experience or training, but that's why we put the right people with the right experience and training to do the critical thinking and assess the risk. So I think it's about supporting humans, the right humans, to have those inputs and that oversight in the leanest possible way, really, to add their value and help control the risks to patients ultimately. Yeah.
Good thoughts to take us into the future. So I wish we had about another 3 hours to keep this conversation going, because there's so much good stuff coming out here, but we're pretty much at time. So I'm going to thank each of you for taking the time. Bob, I know you're on a hideous time zone for this, so thank you for presenting in the middle of the night, and thank you to each of you for your time, your input, and bringing your expertise into this panel. I've certainly enjoyed being part of it. I hope our audience has too, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. This was quite an interesting discussion, and I took away a couple notes. Certainly, how do we use the tools that we have and further develop them to reshape our industry? Our industry needs this. We can't be held back by an old excuse that the regulators aren't going to like it. What do we need to do to help educate? Because the bottom line is we're all about providing the best, the most efficient, the most effective product to meet patient needs. So thank you for a great panel. And as I understand now, based on the agenda, we're going to take a 15-minute stretch break, and then we'll be back to continue with further discussions. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.